is the rhythm of change. This is the sound of redemption. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shout it loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
stay the at home. The Rona is spreading. The is no joke. It's no time to work or roam. The way you can fight it is simple, my friends. Just stay the at home. Now, technically, I'm not a doctor, but mother listen when I read a poem. So here I am, Sam Jackson, imploring you, keep your ass at home. If you want things to get back to normal, don't panic. Just use your dome. Wash your hands, stop touching your face, and stay the at home. It's no time to gamble. Look around, you're not at a casino. Just stay the home as if your name was Trenton Quarantino. Sure, you can still see your friends. Use the app on your phone. But unless you just ran out of groceries, please stay the at home. Thank you for doing your part to flatten the curve, because that is steep. And now that you're home, please feel free to go to sleep. The end.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson Radio Show. I am joined by Vincent Squire.
Hello, world.
He got a candidate for U.S. Senate here in the great state of New Jersey. And Vincent hails from Camden County. Welcome, Vincent. How you doing, man?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on your show.
Vincent. So much to talk about. So anyway, you asked me what the topics were going to be today, and on the intro, and hopefully I do have Andre Little calling in, and some know him as Amir, calling in, and we're going to have a conversation in the age of COVID-19, financial insecurity and financial literacy. And one of the things I want to talk about, Vincent, when we open this conversation up is this. There's a tug of war right now between what we should do and what the government wants us to do, right? So the government wants us to spend money because that's what makes the government function. But us spending money keeps us broke, right? So we have these conversations about how we should have strategies for saving, how we should look at assets and not liabilities, and all these things. Meanwhile, there is a concentrated effort right now to promote spending, senseless, mindless spending. Vincent, I'm going to ask you to mute your mic. Senseless, mindless spending to get the economy going. And so if you don't see that one thing as evidence of what I continue to say here, which is they see us as the commodity to their wealth and power. They know damn well what the racial income gap is, what the racial wealth gap is, what the earnings gap is. They know what all of that is. They know the poverty rate. They know it all. But they go, it reminds me of the scene in, what was it, with Eddie Murphy. Was that 48 Hours where he goes, spend, Mortimer, spend. He's like, they just want us to spend. And we want to spend. So there are a lot of people I see who are looking forward to this $1,200 check so they go buy something. So anyway, we're going to have the discussion about that. The other things that are slated to be talked about is I saw a post and it went something like this. I'm paraphrasing. It said, if I was in special ed, how the hell do you expect me to teach my child now that everybody's home from school? Right? So if I had a hard time and I couldn't grasp these concepts, how do you expect me to work with my child now that we're all at home. So they're going to have a conversation about that. There's something else. I saw this and I posted on my page because I wanted to see if people were going to comment, but I didn't have a chance to look at the comments prior to coming down to do the show. But I was reading something, and I tell you, my ears, Vincent, are so dialed in now to the pivots. And that's what they are, guys. They're pivots. So you'll hear something, and all of a sudden, poof, they're going the other direction. And you got to become more sensitive so you can understand the pivot or know when the pivot happens. And then you have to begin to understand the strategies behind the pivot and what the ultimate goal is. Well, the ultimate goal is what? To keep us as the commodity to the wealth and power. But just like a chessboard, there are moves that are being made to get to the ultimate mate. So you got to understand what those different moves are. So there's a new term that is being floated now, because I was trying to figure out how, in the middle of all of the pain that people are suffering, the fact that people have to be in complete deniability, in complete denial rather, to receive a check, to ask for health insurance coverage, to do all of those things, and then still somehow say that the system we have was adequate, so we want to keep establishment politicians. Like, how do you do both? How do you say, yeah, we're in a world of shit right now, but we can't blame any of the 20, 30, 40-year politicians that have been there. We got to blame somebody else because we want to keep what we have in terms of the politicians, but we're in a world of shit in terms of financial insecurity, healthcare insecurity, food insecurity, housing insecurity, all of these things that were under their purview. But they're telling you, and you're buying into it, don't blame us. Let's just focus on getting it better. Right? So I was thinking to myself, how are they going to now skirt around, especially the establishment folks, skirt around this whole idea that at the end of the day, what we're all talking about is what Dr. King talked about in 1952, democratic socialism. That is the safety net. But because they're so clever and they spend millions and millions of dollars in think tanks because they think those guys in there and those gals in there are much brighter than you. They can manipulate you. Much like they manipulated you when for a long time we were calling it global warming. I want you guys to look this up. This isn't Eric saying it. And then they realized that saying global warming was too negative. That it was too to the point. And that it was waking people up at a rate that was dangerous for the stakeholders who want to continue the practices that lead to global warming. So they said, we got to change the name of it. Lighten it up a little bit. Because this is like, it's just, it's straight no chaser. We got to cut it a bit. So they went into this think tank and they floated around all of these different terms. They went and focus tested them, and they came back with the one that you currently use now. So it wasn't you who decided to use it. You used to use global warming, but in their brilliance and in the way that they socialize you, they got you to start saying climate change. Go away from global warming to climate change. And that's why you now say climate change. Not because it was your idea, but it was birthed in a think tank somewhere using millions and millions of dollars to come up with something that would get you off the path, off the beaten path. And so now they're working to do the same thing. And they say, we can't call it democratic socialism because that pushes us down a road that we don't want to really go down. So now what they're calling it, guys, is safety net capitalism. I'm going to say that to you again. They're calling it safety net capitalism. So expect over the next couple of weeks that you're going to hear it over and 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 over again until they beat it into your head. Just like they beat into your head climate change. You don't even remember saying global warming now, do you? When you hear it, you go, oh, that's outdated. It's no longer global warming. That's, what do you say? It's politically incorrect. politically correct thing is climate change. Well, that's not true. It's global warming. That's what's happening. But they wanted to soften the blow, just like they're softening the blow now. So you're going to hear safety net capitalism. The next thing is we're talking about post-traumatic syndrome with respect to all of these deaths that are occurring. And Vincent's going to give some statistics later about where New York and New Jersey are. But as we speak, Amina is preparing for a virtual funeral because that's how they have to do it now. Her girlfriend's, I believe it's her girlfriend's mother. Is he a mother, darling?
No, my girlfriend.
Okay, a friend of her girlfriend passed away, and then they can't have the traditional funeral. She can't even be with her friend to comfort her, so she's got to do it virtually through Zoom or FaceTime or something like that. And so we talked about this when we had Dr. Wright on and we had Leonard on, and we were talking about how we get to closure, how we handle that grief. But there's something else that's happening. Donald Trump and others have referred to this pandemic as a war. And so if it's a war, there are going to be not only the casualties that are evident, meaning the people that die, but the casualties that exist within our healthcare system, namely doctors and nurses, who will suffer undoubtedly post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, we have hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of soldiers walking around here in America suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Many of you may have family members who are suffering from it. And we don't have a healthcare system, right, that is adequate to be able to provide what is necessary to help them. And so now we're going to layer on top of that. See, because at least those folks, not that you're ever really ready for what you see in war, but the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, and forgive me if I forgot a branch or two, all have worked hard to train these soldiers to be prepared for it. My sister, for one, who is on the front line as a nurse, she's not prepared for war. Many of those nurses are not prepared for war. They don't have a wartime mentality, but they're being overrun by patient after patient after patient, dying and dying. They're witnessing what I just said on the back end of this thing, which is that these patients are dying alone because they can't have their loved one come in. And so these nurses are being tasked now with being the only one in the room with them, comforting them as they take their last breath. They didn't sign up for that, but that's what they're dealing with. And trust you me, they're going to suffer post-traumatic stress disorder. How are we going to handle it? What's set up to handle it? You don't see it. There's no physical scar. Who's talking about it? And see, all the things I'm layering on right now, this is America's problem. But then we're going to dig deeper and talk about, because like I said, when America has a problem or they have a cold, black folks have pneumonia. So everything I'm saying to you is happening here. How much worse is it in the black community? All of the things that I talked about. The financial insecurity, right? If you want to call it the safety net capitalism theory now, how's that working out? And then the post-traumatic stress disorder that's going to occur in the black community. And then at the end, I want to talk about who's responsible for all of this. Who's responsible? You got a lot of people who are posting up, 45 this and 45. And some of these are intelligent people. People I used to have a lot of respect for, but that respect is dwindling now. Because this goes well beyond 45 or Donald Trump, whatever you want to call him. This has been something building up decade after decade after decade. And there have been people on the fringes who have been talking about it, but those people have been chased away by the Negro whisperer and the slave catcher. you see. And so Democrat, Republican, all. But then what about you, the voter, who shorted yourself every election cycle for $25 to go knock on a door or doors, for $75 to do some phone banking, for $100 so you could be a challenger, all the while pimping the dope of the Democratic Party, right? That left you nowhere. So don't blame Donald Trump now. Every elected official that is representing or is supposed to be representing you right now, you have had a hand in getting elected. So let's not put it on 45. That's easy. Looking at what you did is more difficult now, isn't it? But here's the question. We're in an election cycle right now. Right? So it's not about having, long memories and remembering stuff. No, it's right here. It's happening right now. And you see silence across the board from your electeds. The ones that you entrusted to take care of you. Do they deserve to be elected again? Have they convinced you that Donald Trump is the problem to be solved? Or does the whole system have to be broken down? Is it safety net capitalism, democratic socialism, whatever you want to name it? People in America need help. That 99% is real. It's real. There you go, Vincent. It's all yours, man. I've as they say, I shot my wad.
I feel like you just dropped a bomb in my lap.
Hey, Vincent, listen, it's like the long wind up, man. When I start winding up right after the last show. But all of that, but all of this is what's happening right now. All of it.
This is what's happening right now. This is the world that we live in, and
the world we built, Vincent. Don't just say the world we built.
This is the world we built.
There you go.
This is the world we live in. Or as my mother used to say when I made a mistake, you made your bed, now lie in it. And that's what we're now coming to, or a lot of America is now starting to come to conclusion on. What this pandemic has exploited is a lot of deficiencies and inequalities in our American system. What it has done is given a spotlight on the injustices dealing with people of color and neighborhoods. What it has given people an opportunity to see is how useless these people who come around every election cycle and are your best friend. But when you really need them, where are they?
So Vincent, when you say that it has put a spotlight on the injustices, the inequities, the inequalities that exist, put a spotlight on for who? I mean, don't you think that the folks who are suffering from it already know?
Yes. And then there are people who know and they deny it. Then there are people who know and they become slave whisperers. And then there are people who know and they put their hope in something that is totally not for them or in their best interest. Yeah. There are people, and then there are people in the know who sound the bell, the alarm, to get people to wake up and to understand that to change where we are now, it starts right now. It starts in changing our system. It starts in changing our representation. It starts in changing those people who we have elected to represent us. The whole thing that Reverend Dr. King did in his war and campaign on poverty was to bring forefront in America's face that, black people are impoverished. But as he began the march and the 10 cities, what America found out is that there are a lot of poor white people that aren't happy with the system.
Sure.
So that had to be changed, and then they decided they came up with what was at that time called welfare, which which was designed for democratic socialism to take care of the welfare and needs of those who can't take care of it for themselves. Welfare became a bad name under the Reagan administration. Remember the welfare queen?
Yeah.
Yes, but yet people are looking at the headlines and not reading the underlying story. During the Reagan administration, when he was talking about cutting welfare because we had the welfare queen, gave the impression to America that there were black people buying big, thick gold earrings and living a high life off of welfare, which was far from the truth. There were more white Americans on welfare than there were blacks. We're only talking about a group of people that consists of 13% of the population in America. Yeah. So, and then you look at the underlying fact that he was cutting welfare so that he can build his defense against the Russians. So everybody was okay with cutting social programs because they believed that black people were abusing it. Every time you put a black face, they stereotype it as a negative. Henceforth, the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans didn't like it, so they put a black face on it and called it Obamacare. Yeah. Now, when Trump cut Obamacare, he did two things. One, he made people understand that, Obamacare was the Affordable Care Act when white people started getting letters saying that they no longer have it. Mm-hmm. He also put us in a situation where we are right now. The biggest reasons we're having a lot of blacks die from the death of the coronavirus or COVID-19 is the simple fact that they no longer have affordable health care, which means that they don't have the money to go to the doctor, which means they wait, if they are sick, they wait to the last minute hoping that it will go away because they can't afford to pay for it. Henceforth, leading in them going to the emergency rooms and dying.
Well, but, okay, so, look, I'm going to pop all of that on everybody. And we're going to break down what all these different conditions are and why we have them and how we can resolve some of them. But they're not going to be resolved now, right? But, look, one of the things that I find to be absolutely fascinating right now. Do you remember during the election, and there still is an election going on, even though you don't see primaries. Well, you did have one primary yesterday, but you don't see debates, you don't see campaign commercials and those kinds of things. But there still is an election. But remember when we were in the heat of the election and everybody was throwing out the term white supremacy and throwing out the term racial injustice and throwing out the term reparations and black people were, some of them, we were on the edge of our seats saying, oh my gosh, people are finally talking about these issues that are impacting us and the things that we're due and owed, right, as a result of all of the injustices and cruelties and brutality over centuries here. And then it, just like that, it just dissipated, just went away, right? And now, as magically as that narrative appeared, now the narrative is, oh my gosh, black people are suffering. Black people don't have health care. Black people are eating poorly. Black people have all these underlying conditions, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. Black people, like they didn't know this before. Like the medical industry didn't know this before. Like politicians didn't know this before. Like everybody didn't know. Nobody looked at the statistics before to see what the mortality rate was, and nobody looked at any of that. Of course they did, but you know what? It wasn't an election cycle, right? They had masterfully gotten the Negro Whisperers and the slave catchers to continue to get the herd of black people to vote against their interests. So though black folks were in all of that pain, that they couldn't go to the doctor, they couldn't do these things, they had all of these insecurities, they were still voting against their interests. But now, like you said, Vincent, now the world we live in is center stage, right? And everybody's scrambling, trying to show that they have some compassion. And we got to do something about it. Now, just now, not last year, because our circumstances, COVID-19, people dying, but People in the black community have been dying for a long time now, right? At disproportionate rates. And you had no compassion, none. And I'm not, again, not 45 or Donald Trump or whatever you want. I'm talking about black folk that you elected. Where were they? Screaming and hollering. For decades in elected office. Nothing's gotten done. But now everybody, because it's sexy now to talk about it. Just like it was sexy in 2016 to talk about Black Lives Matter. Then it was sexy in the early part of this election to talk about reparations and to talk about all of these things, right? To stroke the emotions of black people. And so now it's sexy because you're crying and mourning your loved ones as they're dying all around you. And so it's sexy for people to stand up and go, oh, you know, we got to do something for these black people. How dumb are we? How dumb are we? And look, I'm gonna tell you, Vincent, I keep going back to the marker for me to show the conditioning of black people. All you gotta do is replay some of those news clips of black folks standing in 96-degree weather to get bottles of water after they were told that they had contaminants in their water, that they were told that they were lied to and deceived, and there was lead in the water. Those people did not storm City Hall. They did not storm down in Trenton. They didn't do any of that. You know what they did? They walked quietly to the different distribution centers, stood in line with their children, and waited for a handout.
And I feel extremely insulted by that, because here is the situation and the history of that actual problem. Let's look at the environment of Newark and the condition of the water. They raised a fuss about it. In fact, they knew about it back when Cory Booker was mayor, yet it was swept under the rug. Why? Because Cory Booker will handle it. Nothing happened, and it progressed, and it grew, and the manufacturers kept polluting the water system, feeding primarily Newark, New Jersey, and I think it led almost up to like Jersey City, and it kept getting progressively worse. It didn't start to change until the renovations of the city of Newark, with all of the other nationalities now coming into the urban area. Then they started realizing, hey, this water is bad. Then the flag was raised. Then the alarms went off. And Cory Booker, now senator, still did absolutely nothing, because in him doing something, he now goes against not the interests of the people of Newark and the people of New Jersey, but he goes against the interests of the corporations that finance his campaign. So, and you know, I'm really insulted by it, because I loaded close to 70 cases of water from my church that we shipped to the churches in Newark that people lined up for.
And you know what? Here's the issue. And so look, when Malcolm says nobody's going to give it to you, nobody's going to give you freedom. If you want it, you got to fight for it. If you're not willing to fight for it, you don't deserve it. By God, I believe that. And so even in the middle of all of this, you don't see people out fighting. You don't see people out trying to figure it out. You don't see people trying to, resolve it. What you see is the profound ignorance that is pervasive in our community. You have people who are still defending those folks who are out there prolonging the spread. And please, Vincent, before I get into that, because before we came on air, we were talking about how in some areas of the country, they are actually starting to flatten the curve in terms of new cases, right? The deaths are still going to come because those have already occurred, right? So, what you see in terms of the deaths are just the reality that existed in terms of the number of infected that we didn't know about prior to all of the testing that's going on. But because of all of these things, there's a lag but some of the metrics that they're looking at now suggest, because when they're doing some of this testing now, the percentage of people who are being tested that are actually infected is lowering in some areas, but not in others, right?
Yes, that is true. Across the board, across America, the projections by August of not the people infected, but the people who will die, and have lowered, with the exception of the state of New York and New Jersey. Both of those states, the projections have raised. Why? Well, other states did more strict versions of shelter in place than New York and New Jersey. 2, other states have less density in terms of person per acre than Newark and New Jersey. And 3, other states took more self-discipline than Newark and New Jersey. We got to the point yesterday where the governor had announced that he was closing the parks and beaches. Why? Well, when people went around, they found out that it was a big, nice, sunny day, and everybody's in the park face-to-face talking, increasing the spread of the virus. And once again, now the governor has to legislate against stupid, where everybody feels that, okay, I won't be affected, it's not going to happen to me, and it does. It hits hard. It hits home. It hits everybody. Yet, and everybody thought that, okay, well, these are people who do international traveling. Black people don't do it. Yet blacks are the largest population of people dying from this virus and disease. Why?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Why? Because we don't do a lot of internationally traveling, but we we are the forefront in terms of the service industry. We are the bus boys, the clerks, the valets, the bus drivers, the package handlers in the airports. We contracted the virus and disease by somebody else catching it, and we bring it to our families. Yet blacks go around. In fact, even yesterday, seeing a group of people playing basketball, and I'm looking at them like, you have lost your ever-loving mind. We have to take this serious. And once again, let's revisit something that we said yesterday. We can't sit there and lull ourselves into a false sense of security that the government is going to take care of us. Historically, the government has never taken care of us. But they have explicitly exploited us.
Well, listen, I don't believe that a lot of black folks are looking forward to the government taking care of us in that respect. I think that you have black folks who are, now they're looking for this check. They're looking for whatever crumbs may happen to fall off the table. But this is where I had this strong disagreement about the term existing as opposed to surviving. See, because surviving or trying to survive means that you're actively participating in something. Existing just kind of means you're there, right? And I think that that for the most part we're just here. Look, but you said something very interesting. Here we are again. Let's look at it as a war, right? On the front line of this war are the essential personnel. And the majority of those essential personnel are black and Hispanic, right? Like you said, the bus drivers, the food service people, just go through the different industries, go into the stores, go into the Walmarts and into the Targets and to the shop. That's where we are, right? Those low-level jobs. Right? And, I'll do it on another show, but we can tie that into the failed educational institution. So when I talk about whether or not we have qualified folks sitting on the Board of Education and these 35 to 45,000 kids in Newark that are coming through this system, are they going to be prepared to do it? Well, they're not prepared. And so as a result of not being prepared, they're on the front line as essential workers. And so here we have it, right? And so now they're on the front line, and so they're more likely to be exposed to and contract COVID-19. But then again, right, they now have all these underlying conditions. And then beyond that, they're the ones who are going to be most discriminated against when they're in the hospital in terms of receiving care, if they have insurance to be able to go. Do you see what I'm saying? So literally, all ends of the stick are shitty. All ends, no matter what end you touch, it smells to high heaven. And then we do nothing about it. We do nothing about it. And so, you know, I don't like. So I see these conspiracy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, one of the biggest reasons that we have to fight for is changing the mindset. Blacks for generations have been indoctrinated into a system of belief that don't care how much you do or that nothing is going to change because you don't have the power to change it. Not realizing that they have the biggest power to change it by electing people who have their interest in heart. Black people have been systematically beaten down so much that they, you know, have gotten accustomed to losing. And that mindset is what keeps them so docile, not just existing, just blowing away like a piece, like one of those little plastic bags in the wind. Wherever the wind takes them is where they go, and that mindset has to change. The biggest thing that they did in terms of eliminating the black voice was first what they call voter tampering or voter intimidation, where they would hang a black man who went to the polling place in front of the polling place. The next thing that they did was sterilization, better known as the Planned Parenthood method. In the 1700s, this white socialist said that, you know what, we're going to give them the ability to have birth control or abortions so that their children aren't born in poverty. No, the real reality is that, by the way, in the 1700s, blacks were 13% of the population. Here we are, 2020. What are blacks? 13% of the population. The thing was to thin out the numbers so that we do not grow, expand, and take voter power. That was the whole thing with it. Yet we don't understand that. So we don't vote. We don't look for people who are looking to further the black agenda. Oh no, every election year when they're doing the primaries, they look at these southern states, and what's the big topic? Who's going to get the black vote? And it's usually not a black candidate. In our local government, even the simple fact of when we hire or elect black politicians, they do very little because now they are accepted in the white world. So they stop being black.
So I want you to, let's slow this down so that people understand it, right? Because let's see where your value is. And I continue to use this term and say we are the commodity to the wealth and power. That means that they have no intention on ever relinquishing any political economic power. They just want to continue to use us as long as we can, just like a slave, just like they did with the slave, and just work the slave in the tobacco fields or in the cotton fields until the slave just died, right? So I mean that was the fate of the slave. And so here we work and push more wealth up to the top, or more wealth up to the top, right? We get dumber and dumber and dumber. We push more wealth up to the top, and then we die, right? So that's how I say they see us. But if you disagree with me, I want you to look at this. Exactly what you said, Vincent. We are the most consistent, largest, and most loyal voting bloc for the Democratic Party, right? Consistent, largest, most loyal voting bloc for the Democratic Party. In fact, you've heard it, not from me, but you've heard them say, we can't do this without the black vote. We can't get elected, whether you're talking about in New Jersey, Governor Murphy said, can't get elected without the black vote. Cannot do it. Right? So if he got elected, that means that black people came out and voted for him. For the most part, Joe Biden's campaign was on life support, if that. And he said, hey, listen, I can't do this without the black folks in South Carolina, right? And now Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee because of black folk. So how is it that we have so much power, or they see us as having so much power to be able to determine governors, U.S. senators, and in fact, presidents of the United States? But God damn it, we can't get health care. We are dying at disproportional rates to COVID-19. How does that happen? How do we have over here so much power to elect folks to the highest office of the land? But when you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, they scrape you off the bottom of their foot like excrement. For you who don't know what that is, that's shit. So that's how they see us. So they convince you over here to vote against your interests, right? And then they have that layer, or those layers that we talk about on the show: Negro whisperers, slave catchers, guard dogs of the oligarchs, all of those different people who are there specifically to socially engineer you into how you ought to vote, right? So none of those people, none of your mayors, in fact, none of your district leaders even, have your best interest at heart, all the way up the ladder. But we're in trouble now.
Let's look at the ladder. And you are absolutely right. Blacks are the actual driving force of corporations and industries because we're the front line in terms of service and adjustment. Now, I have a friend who works at a high-end auto dealership. Mm-hmm. And for 9 years, he was the top seller of high-end luxury vehicles. We're talking beyond the level of Mercedes-Benz. Now, he's been in there and he has made millions upon millions of dollars for the owner of this dealership. Yet, he has never been promoted to manager. What do? They promote this white guy to be his boss, to make sure that he continues to keep on making money for the man. The same thing with the Willie Lynch concept of, slavery was designed as this. It was the first thing in terms of white unity, where the white slave owner would know and understand that, his life is in danger working with the slaves. So he got a poor white guy to be their supervisor. The slave master, who would whip everybody into shape and make sure the production went right. And the same thing in our society, in our politics, is the simple fact that, once blacks start raising up, they give them a little bit of power, a low-level job in which they tell them to say no, rather than the white man saying no. And that's how we got into the situation. Let's keep it biblical. Let me bring it to a biblical perspective. Those who know and study and love the Lord understand that things happen by two acts of God, either his perfect will or his permissive will. In elections, the black vote and people are won by our perfect will or electing them, or our permissive will, not voting at all, which means that the wrong person gets elected every time. In the last election, Donald Trump won by a very small margin. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Donald Trump won because of two things. One, white females voted for him at a huge rate, changing from the Democratic Party. And two, black people said that there were no good people to vote for, so I'm not voting. This is how we got here. This is what we're looking at. And this is what we need to pay attention to. The Jews have a belief and a saying from their time in captivity is this: never again. We need to start looking at never again. Never again should my vote not count. It doesn't count to the Democratic Party, in which black people are loyal to. But the Democratic Party already consider themselves having your vote. So they don't look at your issues and what's going on with you. They don't look at the fact that your kids are being killed in the street by police. They don't look at the fact that you work your behind off and you don't have decent health care. They don't look at the fact that your children are not being taught well in school. They don't look at the fact that this virus is now affecting black people at an alarming rate, almost 4-1 over whites. dying. You're not looking at that.
Look, so yeah.
But to change that, you need to change the people in charge. All you got to do is get up and vote. Get out there and vote.
Look,
and not just vote because they're Democrat. Vote because this person is looking to do things, not just sound bites of, oh yes, we're going to change climate control and we're going to get Medicare for all. No. Let me look at your track record and see where you stood on this issue. Let me look at where you were when we were talking about Black Lives Matter. Let me look at where you were when we were talking about the water being polluted in Newark.
So we're having this conversation, right? And listen, I'm just a realist at this point. I think that for the people who are listening, for some of them, they participate, they get involved, they work hard, but then there's a group that are listening and it's kind of like white noise in their ears because, I just, like I said, I think that it is a myriad of things, but I think it distills down to the fact that they suffer from arrested development, right? And so that next step that seems logical to you and to me, Vincent, is not a step that they're capable in some cases of taking. Like literally, I've gotten to the point where I believe that in some cases it's not, that they are unwilling to, they don't know how to. They don't know how to. I go back to the post that I put up a couple days ago, where I had suggested over the weekend, I think it was, where I suggested to the mayors of Newark, Irvington, East Orange, and Orange, as well as Phil Murphy, that they mandate to the stores. And this was all like a thinking about how do we flatten the curve. And I said, you know what? I'm looking at these parties that people are still having and all these things where, you can't, like you said, you can't legislate stupid. So, okay, fine. They'll try to send the police out to deal with those people as best they can. But one of the target areas that we could attack are the stores. And we can mandate to the stores that anybody that comes into the store has to have a mask and has to have gloves on, right? So when I put that up in the feed, I was astonished. Well, you know what? I really wasn't astonished. I guess I just kind of put my favorite emoji on Facebook is the one with the hand on the face, right? Because it just kind of is a picture that speaks 1,000+ words. And that's what I kept putting up every time I saw people say, well, what if we can't afford masks? What is somebody going to give us masks? Is the store owner going to give us masks? And I'm saying to myself, really? Really? So you're an adult that's currently responding to my Facebook post on either a smartphone that you're paying monthly for or a computer with internet service that you're paying monthly for. And you're asking me about how to save yourself, or that somebody else rather should foot the bill for providing you with something that could save your life. It was mind blowing to watch it. And so I'm saying to them, hey, yo, look, so if you were in a fire and there was smoke coming and you didn't have a proper face mask like the firefighters wear, you wouldn't think enough to tie a rag around your mouth and nose. You wouldn't have the common sense to go get a t-shirt and tie it around. You'd be sitting there like dying of asphyxiation because somebody didn't give you the proper face mask that the firefighter, really, that's where you are? I mean, so you understand what I'm saying? So
yeah,
that is arrested development, that they have not gotten beyond a certain level of advancement in thinking to be able to take that next logical step. So we're having these conversations, and I know some of this is cutting to the quick with some of you guys, but that's where you are. And so part of where I have gotten to in my evolution, which is why I said, I'm realizing, Vincent, my intolerance for the ignorant and the uninspired. So it's one thing to be ignorant, right? Just not knowing. But if you're inspired, that means you're seeking knowledge all the time. Like, you don't know about this, I'm going to go find out. You don't know about that, I'm going to go find out. But at the point that people say, I don't know about it and I don't care, then I have more tolerance for you.
Well, I share your intolerance. Yesterday, I went through a series of 38 minutes of my life because I just wasn't beat for the bullshit. This guy got on my thread and said, oh, this virus isn't affecting anybody. This is a media, we could go out there infringing on our rights. And, you know, after going back and forth with posting and downloading some of the statistics from the World Health and the CDC, he still said, you know, well, we can still do this, we can still do that. And finally, I just got fed up and I said, listen, this is what I want you to do. Kill yourself. Because I don't need you. The world doesn't need you to go out there and spread the virus to kill everybody else. If you have such a disdain for life or your life, then why don't you just die alone and not take everybody with you? Kill yourself and spare us your stupidity.
Yeah. I mean, that's where, look, what I tell you, my father said, those who you won't let die won't let you live. They just won't. They'll drag you down. And so I've done the same thing, Vincent. I went a step further. I've blocked more people the last couple of days because what I've realized is this, that the amount of time that I spend doing research and trying to find information, factual information to be able to share with folks, the more I'm sitting there battling with an ignorant and uninspired person, right, the less energy I have to go and possibly save a life, right? So I'm not going to allow them to distract me anymore. So I just block them. I don't even engage. I just block them. You know, and I see it, and I put another post up and said, look, don't tag me in the nonsense, because that's what they do. They want to distract you. They want to get you all over the place, you know. And you know, these are people who don't mean you any good. You know, I saw a post the other day, and it just shows you, like, I mean, all the things that we talk about on the show, headline surfers, people don't read, right? So there was an article about Bill Gates, and it talked about Bill Gates and vaccinating you know, folks in Africa. And then that was a headline. It was something like that, right? You know, Bill Gates conspiring to vaccinate, you know, Africans. And then when you read it, you get probably about the fourth paragraph in, and the article is talking about how this rumor started on somebody's Twitter feed, and the rumor was ferreted out to be a rumor, right? Not fact-based. And then the publication that ran it offered an apology. But the people didn't read the article to understand that. In that feed where that article was posted, and the headline was sensationalized about Bill Gates feeding into this conspiracy theory about vaccines, they were saying, why Africa? Why are they going to Africa doing? And I went and I said, did you guys read like the fifth paragraph down? And then you know what? There was no response from any of them. So those people went and shared that. So you're right. It's like a virus, right? It's that socially transmitted disease that we talk about. And those people are infecting people in our community every day because they're ignorant and uninspired. They have no interest in learning. None. And we have to identify them, and we have to remove them if we're going to save ourselves. We are dying at alarming rates because of ignorance. Because of ignorance. We don't have elected officials who are there to protect us because of ignorance. We are blaming Donald Trump for the disproportionate number of deaths in the African American community because of COVID-19. We're blaming him out of ignorance. Out of ignorance. I want you to understand that. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't share that he has made all the right decisions or all the wrong decisions. That's not my point. My point is, you have folks. I'm gonna ask you to mute your phone, Vincent. We have folks in the House of Representatives. We have senators. We have mayors. We have governors. Right? We have council people, we have local folks. All of them are to blame. All of them. But because of your ignorance and because you're not inspired to save your own life, you're waiting for somebody else to tell you who to blame for this. And as long as you do that, you'll never repair it. So when you say, Vincent, well, folks should come out and vote, I don't think they will. And to me, this election, and I didn't anticipate, I don't think anybody did, COVID-19 when we talked about 2020 being a pivotal time in our lives. But what makes it even a more pivotal time is almost like that moment where you really realize that you're in an abusive relationship, right? So you're in this relationship, you're being verbally abused, right? And you're trying to figure out, something's wrong, but you're not quite sure, and you're trying to figure out, you may have friends who are telling you, hey, listen, he or she is being abusive to you, you need to leave. And you're like, no, you're trying to figure out. Well, it's abusive once they take a cast iron pan and whack you upside the head. Now there's no debate. The question, because now that's a pivotal moment. You got whacked upside the head with a cast iron pan. What are you going to do? Now, if you stay, what you've done is made clear to your abuser that they can do anything to you. You're not going anywhere. And so what's happening right now, as we see front and center that black folks are getting the shitty end of the stick, and your abuser, primarily the Democratic Party, is saying, but they're going to take it and they're going to come out and vote for us in high numbers. They're going to take it and we're going to be able to convince them that this is all Donald Trump's fault. They're going to take it because they've always taken it. See, this is the cast iron pan, guys, being whacked up against your head. And when you take it and come out in the record numbers that they're hoping you do, right, then there's nothing left to fight for. You have proven that you're willing to be involved in this abusive relationship and not fight back. So this is a pivotal time. And so for me, even some of my friends, Vincent, that I've had for 30, 40, 45 years, I've told them, listen, I got to remove myself from you because they're posting up this Donald Trump stuff. Oh, 45 this, oh, 45 that. I said, wait a minute. Why aren't you posting up? So go ahead and post the Donald Trump stuff. I'm not saying don't do that, but let's be fair about the distribution and honest about the distribution of blame. Let's post the governors and let's post the senators and let's post the district leaders and let's post the mayors and let's post all of these people. Not just Donald Trump. That's see, because when you do that, you're providing misinformation for people. And there lies the problem, Vincent, when you say, well, I want people to come out and vote. Well, you've got folks like these folks who are saying, well, anybody but Trump. No. And what I'll say to you is this. I don't know, and this is another thing that's going on out there. Well, black people are dying because we didn't come out. 1.4 million of us stayed home in 2016, and Hillary Clinton lost. I don't know if you saw that one. See, so they're saying Donald Trump is in office because 1.4 million black people stayed home, and so somehow 1.4 million black people who stayed home because they didn't want to vote for a shitty candidate, responsible for a pandemic that is killing black people. Listen. I'm telling you, So that's essentially, so we fed you a spoonful of shit, you didn't want it, and so now you're responsible. Yeah, we got problems. And the question is, do you realize that you're under assault, not just by the Republican Party, but by the Democratic Party as well?
That's right. Eric, if I could build on what you said previously in terms of that abusive relationship, you know, the reason that we have these abusive and lousy politicians still getting elected, even though everybody knows they're a piece of crap, is the same concept of a person in an abusive relationship. Every now and then they're nice and say that they're going to change and that they're going to be better. And then they go right back into their same standard of operation. Abuse. You know, let me real quick. I'm going to date myself. I used to watch the Gong Show, and there was this comedian called the Unknown Comic. He used to get on there with a trash bag on his head.
Yep.
One day he came in there, his trash bag was all wrinkled up, his clothes were pulled out in disheveled, and he walked up with a bottle and a brown paper bag. And he said, Chucky, baby, let me tell you what this bottle has done for me. This bottle, because of this bottle, I lost my job, I lost my house, my wife left me, my kids hate me, and I'm homeless right now. And Chuck Barrett said, wow, that's terrible. What are you going to do? He said, I'm going to give this bottle one more chance. My kids hate me. That's our mindset with our politicians. We give these lousy congressmen, these lousy senators, these lousy committee members, these lousy mayors one more chance to screw you over again. And then you sit back and look all surprised like, oh, he said he was going to change. Just like the woman who was abused. She sits there in the she sits there in the emergency room, beat the crap out of. And the first thing that comes out of her mouth, he said he was going to change. They don't change. Yeah. What they want to do is continue to be in power so they can continue the abuse. Yeah. When are we going to realize that? It's not a Republican thing. Because the majority of the people in Newark are Democrats. Yeah. The majority of people in New Jersey are Democrats. Yes. It doesn't change. You have to change them. You have to get them out of office. Don't just go vote black because he's a black candidate. We got plenty of black people who aren't really good. I don't elect them.
So, you know, I'm watching on my Facebook page. They are, you know, I mean, I just think, look, we get so caught up in emotional stuff, right? So there are people out there who are, they have these parade lines, I guess, and the fire trucks and police trucks and people with their cameras. I'm watching it as we're doing. They have their masks on and they're cheering. I guess they're supposed to. Somebody asked, "What is this?" and they said, Newark Police Department, Newark Fire Department, and EMS thanking healthcare workers. Look, the way you thank healthcare workers is by flattening the curve. You don't thank them by going out and see the symbolism, right? Because it doesn't require work. You can go out there with your phone and put your mask on and do your selfie, right, and clap. That's all empty. Because after you do that, guess what they have to do? They have to go back in and risk their lives because of stupid people, right, who are working at odds with reasonable people to flatten the curve. So I you know what I would like to see, as opposed to those kinds of pictures? I'd like to see a barrage of people go out into the community and take pictures of all of the idiots who are out there and send them to the police so that they can get tickets. See, to me, that is more, that is something more substantive. See, the clapping and then going back into your house while the idiots still rule, and then put these people that you just clapped for at greater risk. To me, that doesn't make any sense. The sensible thing, if you're going to be out, and you should be home anyway, should be out anyway. But if you're going to be out, I would say the best use of your time would be to go in those areas where those, and I've seen some people doing that, right? And some of it, anyway, if you're gonna be out, if you think that you can do some good, the good you can do is to videotape or photograph, and then anonymously, if you feel your life might be in danger because of the people you're videotaping and photographing, anonymously get it to the police, so the police have the evidence that these idiots were out there, right, when they were supposed to be in the house, and they can be ticketed, fined, and at some point hopefully jailed for their conduct, because lives are being put at risk. So anyway, what else do we have on the docket? There were a couple other things that I wanted to touch on, and I don't know if I covered them all. Let me go back to my notes. Are you still there, Vincent Squire?
I'm still here.
All right. So
the nurses and PTS.
Yes, the nurses and post-traumatic stress disorder. So in general, right? These nurses, I mean, you see videos of them now. They take videos of themselves breaking down because wave after wave after wave of patient coming into the emergency room, coming into ICU, being intubated and then dying. What is it? I think they said that the statistics are at the point that you come into the ICU, I don't know if it's just coming into the ICU or coming into the ICU and then being intubated, that there's a 50% mortality rate, right? So they're looking now, so in their head, it's almost like shell shock, right? Because they realize that there is a 50-50 chance that this person that just came in may be another fatality. How do they emotionally prepare themselves for it as they're dealing with all the other stuff that's going on?
Well, I had an interview about 5 years ago with a combat nurse who expressed not only do the soldiers have PTS for the trauma, but also the nurses. Because the body is not the human body is not built for that level of violence and shock, blood and all. And this is 10 times, this is a 5K version of the most scariest and glorious horror film that you've ever seen. And then you're realizing that this is not a film. The brain goes into shutdown mode because it can't handle that actual trauma and violence. Then what happens is that you go into that cycle of remembering, where the actual event goes into the hippocampus, which stores in the amygdala, and the body actually recalls it. What PTS is the simple fact that your mind is consistently replaying that tape over and over and over again. And what a lot of people don't realize is how common PTS is, especially in the urban communities. Children are the biggest carriers of PTS than what people ever realize, because they see a great deal of violence in their neighborhoods, in their streets. They see violence in their homes with their mothers and fathers, or in some cases, mommy and baby daddies. They see all of that, and they consistently replay that. And that's on one level. Now, imagine every day somebody coming in there, and in your mind is that they have a 50% chance of being that videotape replaying in your head. It's huge. It's incredible. PTS is so strong that the guys coming from Gulf War II, they medicate them. And you have at least 23 military men and women committing suicide every day from PTS. Now imagine this being your nurse. It's a huge amount of trauma and shock and stress.
And now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's to the point where it's that debilitating moment where you're like a deer caught in the headlights. that affects everything from their judgment to their way of life to how they react and respond to people. People really don't understand how serious this is. Not for the simple fact of dying, but the simple fact of how serious it is to the people who are to take care of you.
And beyond the nurse or the doctors on the front line who's going to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, they then are part of a family unit, and that stress they bring home to their loved ones, right? And so mommy and daddy coming home after dealing with that. Listen, I could tell you, I have family members who are part of law enforcement, and in those highly stressful situations, when they got off duty and they came home, they had to decompress, right? They had to go through this whole, because they were so amped up in terms of what it was they were required to do on the job, that they couldn't just come home and assimilate into the normal household, kind of stuff, right? They kind of had stuff pent up inside of them. And so when you have a nurse or doctor who might have had 4 or 5 people code, and then they're off duty, they come home, how do they assimilate back into regular family life? And so for the children, for the spouse, how does that impact them? What's the stress level there? And who's managing all of that?
Well, a lot of them try to self-medicate.
Yes.
So you find that they're all dealing with substance abuse, alcohol, drugs. A lot of them go to trauma, and they bring that trauma to their house. They act out. They are violent and angry and resentful and hateful towards people who are there who truly love them. And a majority of them, and then there is the part that does, like I said, the Gulf War soldiers. They cannot take the back and forthing or dealing with the PTS, and they commit suicide. You really have to understand how deep and serious that it is. I mean, people give police officers a lot of grief, but you do have to understand that police officers, pastors, clergy, nurses and firemen, they deal with seeing a lot of evils, more than what the average person sees, and most of them do, and right now they're seeing this on a daily. If you think that you're stressed out just because now your home has become your office, your school, as well as your cafeteria and your playground, imagine how stressed out they are.
And when you talk about all of this, again, we can look at it in terms of America dealing with it, and then we can look at it from a perspective of a foundational Black American, right? And how much worse it is. I had a sister. Well, I still do have a sister, but she used to work for DIFAS. And I was talking to her yesterday, and when we talk about people who are on the front lines, those folks are on the front line. They got to be out there, right, protecting these children. And so my sister told me that I think she said 3 or 4 people that she knew died from COVID-19 because they're essential, right? They get a call of domestic abuse or violence or just checking up on the general welfare of a child. They have to go out. Look, and outside of that, you've got in these households going on right now, you've got abuse because of the various stressors that we talk about, right? The financial insecurity, the housing insecurities, all the other insecurities that are taking place. So those stressors, are creating, as people are asked to shelter in place, we got to think of some of the people that they have to shelter in place with. Beyond that, if we're talking about the food insecurities, you've got, and I don't know that they've adequately dealt with it. I don't hear anybody talking about it. either from a resolved issue, or that it's an issue that hasn't been resolved. But remember all these children who were in schools, who were looking forward to, that breakfast and that lunch being the only meals that they were going to have. Has that all been resolved? So all of these things, as we deal with the age of COVID-19, have to be looked into. And then yesterday, we had a great guest, Deidre, who was on. And she was talking about her employment or her job placement agency. And going to have her on, Vincent, to start to unpack a little bit more what the job market is going to look like once this stuff resolves itself to some extent, because it's changing forever. And the person you were in terms of being marketable prior to COVID-19 may be obsolete once this is done. And are you paying attention to that? And are you preparing during this time to shelter in place? Are you preparing for what the new you has to be in order to be competitive? So it's a lot. You got a lot going on. Well, listen, we're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, I had hoped to have Amir on. He said he was going to call in. I'll find out when we take this commercial whether he's going to call in. I tried to save some time to get him to talk about financial literacy. And we'll see if we can get him on during these breaks to do so. We'll be right back.
Do you have loss prevention or safety concerns? Black Belt Security and Investigations has armed and unarmed guards that can protect what is important to you. For security you can count on, visit www.bbsillc.com or call 1-800-493-1859 today.
Stay the at home. The Rona is spreading. This is no joke. It's no time to work or roam. The way you can fight it is simple, my friends. Just stay the at home. Now, technically, I'm not a doctor, but mother listen when I read a poem. So here I am, Sam Jackson, imploring you, keep your ass at home. If you want things to get back to normal, don't panic. Just use your dome. Wash your hands, stop touching your face, and stay the at home. Motherfucker, it's no time to gamble. Look around, you're not at a casino. Just stay the home as if your name was Trenton Quarantino. Sure, you can still see your friends. Use the app on your phone. But unless you just ran out of groceries, please stay the at home. Thank you for doing your part to flatten the curve, because that is steep. And now that you're home, please feel free to go the to sleep. The end.
So, all right. So, welcome back, guys. We just saw in the thread. I didn't see the headline come across my feed, but I trust the folks who are in the thread that Bernie Sanders just ended his campaign. And so, what I would say to you guys is that the Poor People's Campaign has been defeated. I don't know how you reasonably expect your situation to improve. My intent, and I said this from the beginning, is to vote down ballot. I I can't look at the current circumstances right now and say that a guy who openly said to his funders and donors that nothing was going to fundamentally change. And now remember, when he said that, and that was reported, we were talking about how shitty the whole system was to begin with. And they were trying to cover it up and saying, well, it's not that bad. Healthcare is not that bad. These other issues are not that bad. But now we see how bad they really are. And so for a person who was vice president for 8 years, was in the Senate for God knows how many years, to say that, fundamentally, like, that we would make some moderate tweaks to some stuff, but fundamentally things were okay. And then the other narrative, I want you to understand the narratives that were out there, whether it was on Donald Trump's side, let's make America great again. And we were questioning, well, what does that mean? Make it great again. When was it ever great? Right? And we see that it was never great for us. Or you had on the Democratic side, the establishment side, where they were saying, and even AOC, got off code where she said, want to get rid of Donald Trump and we want to get America back to being great. What does that mean? Because now we see that there was decade after decade after decade of erosion because of policies that were negatively impacting us. And it's all bubbling up to the surface now. And so everybody, like you said, Vincent, when your abuser wants you to stay, after they beat the shit out of you, what do? They hug you and say, I didn't mean it. Or they convince you somehow that you deserved it. That whatever you got, you deserved it. What do, Vincent? They order flowers for you, right? So that when your family and friends are debating with you about the fact that you're in an abusive relationship, you can buttress that argument with the fact that, well, he sent me flowers. Well, he told me he loved me. Well, he gave me a card. But I say, as do your loving friends and family members, look in the mirror. Look at your busted lip. Look at your arm that's still in a sling. Look at the fact that you had to be in traction for 2 weeks. Throw the flowers away and run. And what I'm saying to you is this. These are all platitudes, right? Whether they were talking about Black Lives Matter, whether they were talking about, reparations or a need to look into something for some black people. And now the fact that all of this is in the open. It's the dirty secret of America. That they've been treating the open dirty secret, right? That they've been treating black people like shit since 1619. Right? So I'm saying, well, so what are we going to look at? We're going to say they're going to do better? Is that the deal? We'll do better this time. We'll do better in these 4 years. Elect me. We'll be different. Isn't that what the abuser says? So I say, blow it all up. All of it. It has to all be blown up. You got to walk out. No, in fact, you got to run. You got to run. Because they're just going to abuse you some more. Go ahead, Vincent. I'm sorry.
Oh, one of the other techniques of the abuser is that he takes away your support system by paying off your supporters. Let's look at that in terms of campaign. They funnel down money to specific groups. A little piece here, a little piece there to keep their support. And that's how they overlook all the damage that they're doing. Let's look at how we talked about the election. Bloomberg started giving black people some money for their nonprofit groups to gain their support. Let's look at the groups that are supported by our senators and how much he gives them. A little bit of money just to keep them all in line and in check. It's the same technique that an abuser would do. Tina Turner wrote in her book that Ike was beating her up and she went running to her mother for support and help, but she never gave it to him. Never gave it to her. She found out why. Because Ike was sending her checks. Her own mother kept her in harm's way so that she could keep getting those checks. And that's what our politicians do to our support groups. They come by, say hello, drop a couple of dollars off, show up at these dinners just to keep your support and continue the abuse. We have to wake up, people. We have to wake up. I'm sorry, Eric. getting off my soapbox.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm not convinced that we will.
I'm optimistic and positive for hope for our future and hope for New Jersey. I think that New Jersey deserves a lot better than what we've been getting. All we need is to get the right people in place to make the right changes. See, and that's what's threatening to everybody. When someone wants to come in and do fundamentally good, that means that all the corruption that's going on right now has to end. And those people want that corruption. They want to keep that money coming in. So they're going to push back and push back hard. But we have to be diligent, resilient, stubborn, that we deserve better. And these people that are in office can't give it to us. They can't be part of the solution because they're part of the problem. So I have a lot of hope that we're going to make this change. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. I don't know.
This election, we're going to prove you wrong, brother. We're going to see some change. We're going to see some change, get into office, and make a difference.
So I just came across my feed. It says France sees highest one-day death toll of 1,417 people. Now, what were the numbers, Vincent, that you were looking at in terms of New Jersey and New York? Because you did say that other places things seem to be getting better, but in New Jersey and in New York, that's not the case.
CNN was checking because the Republicans now have been doing their spin on the numbers. So CNN has been checking and talking with Dr. Fauci and discuss how he got the numbers. And basically, he said it was projection was based upon the deaths that we had, the models that we use with Italy and China, and the numbers was based upon if only 50% of America would stay in place. Now, what we found out which made it lower is that some states took a stronger method of locking people down, arresting people, and giving them charges to ensure that people stay in place. What the difference that they also, so that made the new projections lower in those states. So totally, the projections are lower. However, in New Jersey, since there was a lot of cities that did not enforce to stay in place, and people were running rampant, and New York, because people have been crying and screaming about the violation of their rights and going out and infecting people, and the density of the population of some of the cities in New Jersey and New York, they found that the numbers and the projections got higher than they anticipated. And that's just at 50%. So if we can move those projections and make them lower. If people do as Samuel Jackson said, stay home.
Yeah.
It jumped up to 30,000 lives. We're talking about by August. 30,000 people in New Jersey dead. This has to stop. I mean, if that's not, if that's not inspirational, locking yourself down in the home, then what is, or what does it take for people to get it in their heads? And we're talking about, right where you are. You're right in the heart of it, Eric. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about Newark, right in the heart of it.
Oh, no, I'm not in Newark.
I mean, well, I know you're not in Newark, but you're in pretty close proximity.
Yeah, so on to, and Amir, haven't been able to reach him, so we're not going to have that conversation. But I do want to say this before I move on. In the post that I make, I try not to, if you're posting reasonable things, I try to allow the dialogue to go on. What I have noticed is that some folks have taken my posts and used them as an opportunity to promote, the individual things that they're in, and I've really showed, I think, a decent amount of restraint and not just deleting those things. But I've asked folks not to post them now, and Amir, is one who posts about gold and carat bars and all this other stuff. And what I did, and so here's where I am. I gave him an opportunity to come on the show, right? To true up about what it is he was talking about, as opposed to just kind of like, bombing my threads with this content. And he didn't show up. So do you understand what I'm saying? So just come on the show, let's have the conversation, but don't go in the thread and just do that. I think it's I think there's a certain amount of decorum you should have when on social media, right? Anyway, I just need to say
no, I think it existed a certain amount of cowardice, like the rest of the cyber bullies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go there, but what I will say is this, because he also posts in the thread, hey Eric, why don't you have me on the show? And so for all of the people who saw that, I want you to know that I invited him to come on the show. And so, I haven't heard from him. So, but I'm going to talk about financial literacy from a different perspective, and not about the gold stuff, but just in general, how you ought to be saving money. Hello, caller.
Yes, this is Amir.
Ah, see, here's my brother. So we do have him on the phone. All right.
Yeah, there's no cowards over here, bro.
No, I didn't. No. I didn't call you.
I heard somebody say it.
Yeah, no. But
That was me.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. But I did want to make sure that people understood that you asked to come on the show, and I did accept it. So you wanted to have a conversation about financial literacy. If we could. We could talk about it in the age of COVID-19, but then beyond, right? Because it's going to end. So I'll give you the floor, and I'll chime in where appropriate.
Okay, so let me start from the beginning. Eric, you know full well that for 3 years I've been telling my community that what happened to me and all of us in 2008, I've been trying to warn us for 3 years, way before COVID-19, that the recession was coming again, based on the numbers that I was seeing in the marketplace internationally. Every day of every week, I tagged you and everybody on my page that this was coming. This has nothing to do with COVID-19. And up until the week before the crash, I was telling my people, start saving gold. Start saving cryptocurrency. The U.S. dollar, everybody knows the U.S. dollar loses 3 to 5% of its purchasing power every year. But that don't stop us from saving paper. What I was trying to do was wake our community up to factual, historical, monetary policies and historical crashes that no one in this city was trying to alarm our people about. In my timeline, day after day, I get reminded of what I said in every post that I posted and the people that I tagged, asking the leaders in this community to stop focusing on politics. They can't help us in a financial crash because the president doesn't have power over the monetary policy. The Federal Reserve does. Can you do me a favor, Eric? Can you give me a yes or nay if what I said is true?
I don't know about Eric, but I can address that.
No.
Wait, I'm not talking to you because you don't know me.
No. But he knows.
I'm asking you, Eric, have I or have I not been talking to our community, using my page as an alarm and actual facts, sharing with our community that this crash was coming to get out of the market? Did I do that, yes or no?
I would say you've been talking, but you've been talking about a bunch of things. But yeah, you've been talking about.
No, Eric, come on, let's keep it to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the financial crash, gold, crypto, and us losing our money in the 401k.
Right.
Had I been saying that?
You asked me a question. I'm answering your question. So yes, you've been talking about the cyclical nature of the financial market and the instability of paper. Right. You've been talking about the Federal Reserve. You've also been talking about the stability of gold and the fact that folks ought to move their money from paper money or their savings from paper money to affordable purchases of gold, which is carat bars. Did I answer your question?
Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay.
So the only.
If I could, you stated at the end before you asked Eric what you said was correct, and you made an incorrect statement with that he did not touch. Now, you said that the government does not control the Federal Reserves. Then why is it called the Federal Reserve?
Please don't expose yourself, Puff.
No, I'm exposing you because what you're doing, because that was a false statement that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so let me address it.
Go ahead.
The Federal Reserve is as federal as Federal Express. Anybody who knows about monetary history, let me explain you who I am before you go any further and opening your mouth and saying something that's going to make you look foolish a year from now. I've been studying the monetary history of our country from inception. I've been studying the global recessions and how our economic collapses has happened since 3600 BC. I've been studying the cyclical events in the United States of the financial market since 1792, from the first crash when black people lost their money in the Freedmen's Bank to 2008. Please don't ask me and tell me or question me about the Federal Reserve being federal, because third grade to know anything about our economics or monetary system.
Then I don't know anything about our economics and monetary system. Please, let's look at this. Now, I studied international law and finance. Wait a minute, hold it, let me finish. Right now, I'm working on it. No, please, let him finish. Let him finish. Okay, let me finish.
Wait, 1 second. 1 second, guys.
Now, as I stated, not only that, international law, yet understanding and now studying government and theology. So when you say that the Federal Reserve is just as federal as Federal Express, you're wrong. The federal government is backed up. No, Federal Express is a private corporation. The Federal Reserve is backed up by the United States government.
The Federal Reserve is a private corporation that does not have to answer to any monetary law, scrutiny, or any other policy.
Oversight. It has no oversight from the federal government. No, it does have oversight over it.
1 second. Listen, I'm going to hang all the phones up.
That is incorrect, and you are misinforming the people. The Federal Reserve is a government agency which has autonomous power. It does not take dictation or power by the president, but yet it does reserve and give balance to the economics ups and downs. Because the federal, because your federal, because your federal dollars is backed up by gold in the Federal Reserve.
Oh my God.
Vincent, firstly this. We have to have some decorum on the show. Right?
Okay, go ahead.
We can't yell because people can't hear. And then wait a minute. And then we can't talk over each other because people can't hear. So when when I ask you to stop, it is because people are saying in the thread they can't hear. So what you're talking about should be so that they can hear it. All right. So let's talk over each other.
Repeat the last thing you just said, Vincent. You said our money is backed by what?
Our federal dollars. which basically started after the Civil War because we had so many dollars in every state that there was a currency issue, which means we came out with the federal dollar bill or note, which is backed by gold, which is in the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was designed because our monetary value or our paper dollar is backed by gold, is to give balance to the ebbs and flows of our economy, to make sure that our dollar remains strong. It is backed by the federal government. It is a part of the federal government, yet it is autonomous to the fact that they can give you true reserve and not be pushed by any politician or president.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, 1 second here. We had another caller.
Okay, wait, Eric.
We got another caller. Caller, would you like to weigh in?
Well, I have to agree with Amir on this. This is Farrakhan. The Federal Reserve is not a part of the United States government in any shape, form, or fashion. There is an act called the Federal Reserve Act, okay, which allows for the government to create this, okay? However, the Federal Reserve is not under any guidance and or direction of the federal government. There is no politician. There is no federal. It is autonomous in the sense that it functions totally separate from constitutional law.
No,
it does. It's not.
It's autonomous, but it's not.
Excuse me.
I'm reading it right now.
Read it yourself, okay?
Why don't
Where
somebody...
are you reading it from? What is your source?
Okay, let's look at Google and the Federal Reserve. If you look at the first sentence, the Federal Reserve System is the central banking system of the United States of America. It was created in December 1913 with the attachment of the Federal Reserve Act. After a series of financial panics leading to the desire of a central control, which means it is controlled and owned by the United States.
It is not controlled or owned by. Clearly, if you read down further, it says the Federal Reserve System is composed of several layers. It is governed by presidential appointed board of governors. The Federal Reserve Board. Let me finish. Okay. Let me finish. Okay. Now, okay. 12 regional Federal Reserve banks. Okay. It is not controlled by the federal government.
It is owned by the United States of America. It is the United States Bank. It's where all of our gold
United States Bank, my friend. It is an act. It is a system, actually. Right? It's literally, we call it the Federal Reserve, but it's actually the Federal Reserve System. It isn't a single bank. It is the Federal Reserve System. That banking system of this country works and functions off of.
Yes, that part is half true. But the whole thing is that it is true.
Here is why or it's not.
Here is the other. No. Here is the other part of it. The Federal Reserve is backed by and sponsored by the simple fact of our gold reserve.
Let me ask you guys a question.
That's what gives the Federal Reserve the power.
Can I ask you a question?
That is the United States deposit of gold.
All right, so I think that...
No, it's not.
Listen,
I'm
going to take control over the show again.
If you really want to get to it, but it's not backed by gold. The United States dollar is not backed by gold. It has not been backed by gold since 1972. Right. It is actually bonding. Okay, when it makes its monetary policy, it makes it based on treasuries and bonding.
Right.
So what are you talking about?
Okay, now if you are bonding at the bottom line...
All right, I had to disconnect everybody, guys, because it's crazy. I don't understand why we can't have a reasonable conversation without talking over everybody. I don't get that. Anyway, and I'm sorry, guys, that I did that, but folks are saying that they can't hear. They can't hear. So here's the question and you can answer it in a thread. And again, I apologize that I disconnected everybody. Is this true? I'm just going to read the statement. And this devolved into some other kind of conversation, which was really supposed to be about financial literacy. And it became about a definition of the Federal Reserve. Right? And so, look, so at this point, like if we can't, I don't know who's on the phone, but if we can't not talk over each other.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Anton Wheeler. I know decorum, brother. How you doing?
Right, I'm okay. But if we can't not talk over each other, I don't know what we accomplish, right? And so if like we have people who are listening to the show who tune in every day and give of their time, and what we can do is respect them when they say, I want to hear. Right? So I'm not trying to be rude to anybody and cut anybody off. I'm saying let's value the time that people are spending to come onto the show. But this has the whole thing has devolved.
What's going on?
I'm sorry, I was disconnected.
No, I hung up because you won't listen. I'm asking you not to talk over everybody.
Oh.
Anton, you're on the phone. Go.
I sound like a rabbi doing.
I'm well.
Excellent.
So, as I was saying, the Federal Reserve and that bonding, and the fact of the bonding means that you have to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anton, do you want to say?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to say something. I keep getting cut off.
No, go ahead.
So what I'm trying to figure out was what was the question? What was the overall question? Because
you know what? At this point, I don't know. I thought that the conversation was about financial literacy, and then it devolved into then it became a question about understanding the Federal Reserve, and then it became just trying to define the Federal Reserve, and so I don't know that that's where people were expecting to be.
That's easy. Look on the Federal Reserve website. Can I say something, Eric? Can I interject something?
I just want. I want. Go ahead, Anton. Did you finish your statement?
I said all you have to do is look on that website. It tells you what it is. It tells you when it was founded by Woodrow Wilson.
Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead, Amir.
It tells you that it's a private entity. It is a private corporation, and it even became more private with Nixon and Henry Kissinger to take us off of the gold standard. So I'm not going to intellectually masturbate ad nauseum about something that's easily researchable. So I think that as men, we need to respect each other, that we come from different mindsets and different frame of references, and we have different opinions. But the information is there. You're entitled to your own opinion, not your own set. Okay. So let's research it together.
Let him finish.
Let's research it together. Okay, can I at each other instead of going on with each other? Let's research it together.
Without shouting, Federal Reserve, Washington, D.C., United States. President presently is Jerome Powell. Founded by Franklin Delaware Roosevelt, December 23rd, 1913. Woodrow Wilson wasn't there. So what we're running into
I didn't mean Woodrow Wilson. I meant that. Now, hold on. Trump wasn't president until when? Till the Great Depression? Till World War II? When you say Trump was president, 1913?
So again, I'm trying to understand what are we trying to get to? What are we trying to get to here? Amir, go.
The Federal Reserve is a private corporation.
So Amir, can I ask you a question? So during the middle of this, right? So I just went and Googled. I said, who really owns the Federal Reserve? That's what I Googled. And this came up. Okay. Let me came up from the Federal Reserve Bank.gov.facts. And it says the Federal Reserve System is not owned by anyone. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 by the Federal Reserve Act to serve as the nation's central bank. The Board of Governors in Washington, D.C. is an agency of the federal government and reports to and is directly accountable to the Congress. Is that true or not?
That's true.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm asking Amir. Amir, is that true or not?
Oh, yeah. They in theory, they respond to the Congress. But if anybody who seriously knows financial history knows that anybody that opposed the Federal Reserve outside of Andrew Jackson starting in early America was murdered. Anybody who knows history knows that anyone who tried to overturn, get rid of the Federal Reserve, the only one who was successful in U.S. history was Andrew Jackson. And his famous term was, I killed the bank. He's the only one in history who's ever paid off the debt of the country. The only president in history.
Again, to answer his question, not with a side statement. Again, to answer Eric's question without another side statement, was what Eric read to you true or not?
I said to you, yes, in theory.
So now, for the remaining 4 minutes, we were going to be talking about financial literacy, And so, we got 4 minutes.
Eric, let me just say this to you, and I'm going to get off. I would like a chance to teach our people, right? To teach our people how to save their money, how to not to be a victim of the Federal Reserve System anymore, because there's very few people that will call in on this phone that actually owns 3, 4, 5, or 6 ounces of 24 karat pure gold. Very few. Because that differentiates from people who understand this prior to 2019, prior to 2008. That will differentiate people who just talk theory and those who are practicing what they preach and what they've been teaching. This is where I am. I've been teaching this for some time. I own the metal. I teach people how to save it in an economical way that they can afford to do it, and in a tax deferred payment, or should I say tax deductible option. So I would like a chance to come on and teach. I'm not here for debates. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to teach our people how to save their money starting today, not debating people on the Federal Reserve.
So could you answer this question? What do you get paid for in this instruction? In what instruction? How are you compensated for this instruction of teaching people? Yes, that's a very good question. Every single business has a product, and when that product is sold, money is made, right? Is that not true? Okay. So our company is the largest distributor of 24 karat gold in the world in small denominations, right? We become affiliates of this company, just like people become affiliates of Uber, just like people become affiliates of Airbnb or Lyft, and when they share that link, right, and those people purchase physical gold, we share in the profits. The same way So your company makes money by selling troy ounces of gold? Yes. We're the first company in history to sell gold below a gram, making it affordable for working class people. And so gold is actually measured by the value being a troy ounce. So you're giving them 87th of an actual troy ounce to equivalent to that gram. So how do they actually recoup on that value? You're making money off of them by selling them a sliver of gold. But how do they? Let me answer your question before you get it out. Answer my question. Well, if I can get it out, you can answer because you know the full question. How do they make money? Right? How do the person owns the gold? Own the gold benefit? Is that what? Yes. Okay, because when you exchange your depreciating paper for physical 24 karat gold, regardless of what amount or weight it is, it will appreciate faster than the dollar would decline. So, to give you an example, I made a post last year with a $5 piece of gold, right, a Starbucks coffee and a $5 bill. 12 months later, that $5 piece of gold is worth $6.36. So if you had saved physical gold in any amount, you would have earned a income, or you would have appreciated value instead of a depreciated value saving paper. Well, I get the same thing with the interest rates on my $5. In fact, I get better interest rates than your piece of gold. So okay, so what you're saying is that. So what you're saying now? I'm sorry, I gotta go. You don't know anything about economics.
So listen.
You don't. And I gotta go.
Wait. So what we'll do, right? Because I want to give you adequate time. I said that you would call in today at 10:15 because I wanted to give you all of that time. So you
right, but when I came on, Eric, y'all were talking about COVID-19,
but
I text you. I text you and let you know I had somebody who passed in my family. I text you.
Which is fine.
So that's why I wasn't on at 10:15.
No, which is fine. Which is fine. I'm simply saying to you, you say to me, Eric, I want to come on, and I'm saying, okay, fine. So you let me know when you want to come on, right? We can have a dedicated day, right?
Thank you, Eric.
Right. So you let me know. You have a dedicated day, and we spend an hour. You decide whether you want the first hour or the second hour on that day. And then we can begin to unpack this stuff and we'll have the appropriate people on so that we can have a sensible conversation around it. But no yelling and talking over each other because folks can't hear.
Right.
All right?
So what is that Wednesday, Eric? Because I have.
It could be Wednesday. Does that work for you?
There's certain facts that some people are void of who believe that their bank is paying them interest higher than what gold is returning in appreciation. So because this is on a recorded line in a radio show, Brother Vincent, please share with us what interest rate you're getting on your money.
Well, let's see. I get interest rate on my money. I get interest rates on other. Wait.
What is the interest rate?
Well, let's see. On my flexible, I got a 9%. On another one, because of the amount of value, I got 3%. And the interest rate. Wait. Okay, let's see. I got three of them. I'll give you the top three: Bank of America, TD Bank.
And what's the interest rate?
And Wachovia.
Okay, now what are the interest rates? Please share that with us again.
Let's see. I got 9 on the savings. I got 14 on my investment, and I got another 3 on a large interest investment. So now,
with that, let that be history that y'all heard with him.
But however, also, you know, when you come back, I like to address some issues about the FTC and gold trading too. Right. So I'm looking forward to it.
So
that's not me debating you. I'm here to educate my community.
Right.
No, I'm here to be educated too.
So what we're gonna do, and I don't know that it's necessarily a debate. It doesn't have to be a debate, right? But we should, the idea of putting information out without challenging it isn't something that we're going to do here on the show either. But
I'll provide proof.
So I'm
going to provide factual proof of everything that I say.
So you figure out the day, right? And then Wednesdays. Okay, so every Wednesday, is it going to be in the first hour or the second hour?
I would prefer the first hour.
Okay, so I'll start putting together a promotion that'll let people know that we'll be doing a segment on financial literacy, and financial insecurity for the community every Wednesday from 10 to 11. That's fantastic. All right, brother. I appreciate you, man. And listen, I know you said that you were dealing with some a COVID-19 emergency in the family. My prayers to you and to them, because this is all real. We're having these discussions and/or debates, but in the midst of all of this, we've got this reality called COVID-19. Brother Anton Wheeler, you still on the phone? Did he disconnect? Because I don't get that brother too often, and so I know we extended the show by 5 minutes. I was going to go another 10 minutes just to have a conversation with him. Anyway, Vincent.
Yeah.
As always, man, and listen, man. I gotta, one more area, which I don't mind. One more area where I'll begin to do some research in preparation for the show, guys, to make sure that what we're bringing you is factual information. But you know what I love about it, and we're getting ready to go off, and I thank you guys for tuning in. Is we're getting ready to have. I believe, Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we're gonna build a relationship with Deidre, who was on yesterday, and have her as a part of the show. I don't know how much time she'll be able to devote, but what I want to do is if we have access to somebody who this woman owns her own job placement agency, right? She's a recruiter, and she said that she represents over 60 companies. So I want to be able to wrap our collective arm around her and say I want her to be a resource for us, right? Where we can learn all of the different things, the do's and the don'ts, the advantages, the disadvantages of doing certain kinds of things on interviews and prepping for jobs and jobs that are available, all those things, right? So I want to be able to do that. Brother Amir, we're going to have these conversations, and sometimes they can be a little uncomfortable, but we have to have decorum so that people can hear what we're all saying. But we're going to be bringing that information to you too, so I'm excited about that. I know Dr. Wright asked me to reach out to him and Leonard, and maybe we'll have them on a more regular basis, maybe once a month or twice a month, to continue to talk to us about how to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder and the grieving that's taking place within our communities as these death numbers or mount in our communities. So there's a lot, and if there's any other thing that you think that we should be talking about that would be beneficial to the community, not just through the age of COVID-19, but beyond, please let us know, and we'll add it to the content roster. But I'm excited.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hey, listen, Vincent. Always a pleasure having you on, brother. And I'm
starting to develop some of that Eric Dawson passion when I'm hearing the BS, but
well, listen, we will certainly make our way to the truth. That's the goal, right? To make our way to the truth. And so that's what we'll do. So I look forward to conversations on an ongoing basis. And look, again, I got to go read the information about Bernie Sanders dropping out. I'm voting down ballot everywhere.
He's got an announcement going out right now. I want to hear what it is.
All right. Be safe. And listen, you know what? I'm going to play him again because he's worth playing. Stay the F at home. Thanks for tuning in to the Eric Dawson Radio Show.
God bless everyone. Be safe.
At home. The Rona is spreading. This is no joke. It's no time to work or roam. The way you can fight it is simple, my friends. Just stay the at home. Now, technically, I'm not a doctor, but listen when I read a poem. So here I am, Sam Jackson, imploring you, keep your ass at home. If you want things to get back to normal, don't panic. Just use your dome. Wash your hands, stop touching your face, and stay the at home. It's no time to gamble. Look around, you're not at a casino. Just stay the home as if your name was Trenton Quarantino. Sure, you can still see your friends. Use the app on your phone. But unless you just ran out of groceries, please stay the at home. Thank you for doing your part to flatten the curve, because that is steep. And now that you're home, please feel free to go to sleep. The end.